All right. Introduction of the center. So the short for the center is, we call it SETI, Subsurface Energy, Digital and Digital Innovation, right? The mission of the center is to harness the digital technology to address global energy challenges, specifically leveraging Wyoming's unique strength in energy and innovation. That's our mission statement. The center started on blockchain first, but now we expanded in on other topics, mostly around AI and machine learning, because that's a hot topic and nobody can avoid it at this point in time, right? So formally, we have 5 areas of focus. We work on blockchain for sustainable energy. That's what I'm mostly talking about today, but I will also tease on some other ideas that we're working on too. Artificial intelligence and big data analytics, it's mostly about pattern recognition. Scientific machine learning is where we are bringing machine learning and our old theoretical numerical understanding of the world, and we are combining them together. It's relatively a new field in a lot of engineering disciplines, and we're definitely working on that. It's a very exciting field. The next area we're working on are digital twins and virtual augmented reality. This is mostly towards management optimization of the operations in the field. And the last one is discovery of novel fluids using AI and lab components. So we do have a big lab space that we're working on too. My teammates are all from the same department, Energy and Petroleum Engineering. Dr. Minu Rabi is an IT/petroleum engineer expert. She works on a lot of AI tools, including graph neural networks. Dr. Al-Shahabi here is a drilling engineer, but he works on automation and optimization of drilling operation and other things as well. All right. So let's start by why blockchain matters for energy. Right? So before I start talking about it, the one thing that I typically one obstacle that I have to go through initially at any talks is to differentiate between blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I'm hoping here we have less of a problem, right? But I just still want to go through. I see some students sitting here. So blockchain is the fundamental technology that made cryptocurrency possible, right? But it's by itself is a technology that is semi-independent of these cryptocurrencies, right? It could work with it very well, but it could be used also entirely in a different way. And that's where we are exploring in our center. What is the properties of blockchain that are uniquely interesting for us? It's a trust. We all know it's immutable record of data. Any data, cryptocurrency or any other data you put on blockchain. It provides transparency and real-time visibility of the data, energy data, anything related to that. It is decentralized, meaning that it is removing the single point of control, enables peer-to-peer interaction, right? So these are main properties of a blockchain. Now, these properties combined with the application in energy can bring a lot of new business ideas or business models, including tokenization of energy assets, including renewable energy credits, carbon credits, and I have some other application that I will go through later, right? So there are some interesting areas to explore. Okay. Now let's address Wyoming. Why in Wyoming? Why I think we are in a really, really good position to do that here in the state of Wyoming. So we know that Wyoming leadership is pro blockchain, right? We have one of the first states to establish a comprehensive blockchain regulations from cbdi banks, DAOs, and so forth. We are now becoming a hub for blockchain businesses in the state of Wyoming. A lot of blockchain businesses are moving to the state of Wyoming. And we do, on top of policymaker support, we have a lot of support from the university side on doing research in this area. On the other hand, Wyoming is also an energy state, right? We are one of the nation's top energy producer and exporter in the state. We have a diversified resources for energy from coal, natural gas, oil, wind, solar. Rare earth minerals are not necessarily a source of energy, but they are used for batteries and other areas of energy. We have some resources in Wyoming. And most recently, hydrogen is another area that we are working on. I have a couple of projects we are working on. First, finding geological hydrogen in the state of Wyoming. That's an interesting area. The second, manipulating certain formation to generate hydrogen subsurface and control it. That's another area that we are funded by a Department of Energy to look into that. And we have a strong tradition of powering the United States, right? So I think hopefully you see where the connection is very strong. The energy and blockchain is very strong in the state of Wyoming. All right, so there are several applications. That's a lot of different publications and a lot of different research groups looking at. There are a few I'm listing here that this is not by no means exhaustive list of applications. One interesting application would be environmental sensing when you combine IoT and blockchain for securing data. That's one of the projects that we're working on, and I will get into a little more detail of that. Carbon management, carbon credits is another really interesting area that blockchain can help. I'll talk about that as well. The other areas could be supply chain management, transparency in supply chain management in the energy sector. Differentiable fuels is another interesting area. Maybe Holly just briefly mentioned that in the state of Wyoming, a company actually tried it. And the idea here is if we are in an energy transition, if we are moving towards decarbonizing, the fuels that have lower carbon footprints are going to be favorable and probably price themselves at a premium, right? In Wyoming, we are producing natural gas with a very, very low amounts of emissions. And some companies try to commercialize that and sold their price premium in a premium manner. But the question or the main issue with that is that we need to secure that data somehow, right? We need to provide proof for that data so the customer can trust us. And that comes out with a combination with blockchain and securing data through the blockchain. Other areas such as critical mineral tracking, deposits from land management of that type, equipment maintenance records, grid balancing, which maybe relates more to the Bitcoin mining, and grid balancing is another area of interest that's different groups are interested in studying it. All right, so diving into some of our projects that we're working on. So in the blockchain projects, I specifically stay within the core technology we are developing in a center, less on application or applied part of it. It's due to respect to our partners or would-be partners. I don't want to necessarily reveal a lot of information about their projects, but these are the technology that we are using to empower a lot of different projects, right? One, environmental sensing, right? So hopefully everybody here knows what blockchain is good for. A blockchain is a digital tool that is very good to secure digital data, right? If you have a digital data, it can secure it for you. It is transparent, and every property of blockchain applies to it. Now, when you want to use blockchain for a real-world application, the problem becomes the point that we are putting data on blockchain, or who is the person that putting the data on blockchain. That person might have an incentive to fake the data or manipulate the data. That become our weak point, right? So there are a lot of research going on right now how to solve that problem. Sometimes it's called Oracle problem. One way that we are specifically studying it is connecting secure IoT devices to blockchain, removing the human in the middle, right? These IoT devices are sitting in the field. Let's talk about one application. It, in this case, would be methane emissions. You want to monitor your methane emissions and secure that data for a lot of different purposes. It could be because regulatory reasons. You need to report it to the regulators. It might be because you want to prove that your operations are low carbon footprint so that you can sell your gas with a higher premium price, right? And with that application, we need to connect these IoT devices to blockchain, right? We developed that application so far in the lab scale, of course, not in the field scale. We call it decentralized IoT blockchain-based environmental sensing, or DIoT-BES. In the picture here behind me, you see a little lab setup. You see a gas cylinder at the corner. That's the methane gas. We are using relatively cheap hardware. We are using a Raspberry Pi system, MQ4 sensor is a methane sensor. And we are exposing this methane sensor to different level of methane artificially, right? We are controlling it. And this sensor communicates directly to blockchain. Data goes on blockchain. We wrote a little script or a little smart contract on blockchain that monitors this data and very simply follows a logic. If the emission is above a certain level, send the alarm signal. And the alarm signal goes to that little light at the bottom of the screen, you see. So we can track that time. How much time does it take for us to do it? We can do it centralized manner. We can connect everything and do it centralized manner, but doing it decentralized way using blockchain so that you can record everything is an interesting application, and we have established that so far. One question that you might ask that is a very good question is, now your weak point connection would be your IoT devices, right? So somebody can attack your IoT devices and the result would be the same. To solve that problem, we are looking into certain more recent applications or more recent technologies called decentralized identity and decentralized physical structure network. These systems or networks allows for these IoT devices to have their own ID, secure ID. And using different technologies, we can make sure that we first check the identity of these different IoT devices before they communicate to blockchain. So we can make sure that first we know which IoT device sent us this device. It's not a fake IoT device that's trying to manipulate. Second, we need to make sure that the data that IoT device is taking is correct, and this needs to be mathematically proven before we get the data, right? So these are all can be done using this newer system. We established some benchmark in the lab, and we could see that we can do a pretty good 6.2 second detection to token latency, meaning that from the time that we are detecting to the time that we are issuing a token to a sensor, and that will take about 6.2 seconds in a lab scale, of course. I'm not talking about the field scale and more rugged environments. What does that do? That opens up a new door now. So now these sensors will have their own identity and they can be their own agents on a network, right? So let's say we have sensors in the field that are detecting methane emissions and we are recording these methane emissions to the system. They could be rewarded by getting the correct data, right? By getting issued tokens that go to their accounts, because with these IDs, they can have wallets, right? And now combining this with AI agents, now you have an autonomous system that can run continuously to support you with the data. And in turn, in reward, it gets some money to just for their owner or for themselves to keep connecting and moving forward. So that's a really interesting area to explore, maybe a little futuristic, but it has a lot of applications right now. The next area that we are working on is on carbon management and carbon credits. So blockchain, we can use the blockchain to leverage secure and transparent system of monitoring, verifying, and accounting for carbon. This MVA is a recently established concept while we are moving through decarbonization. These are the type of reporting that a lot of companies now have to do. And what we are suggesting is that you can do that all on blockchain. The data can go on blockchain. You can monitor the data. A regulator can monitor the data on blockchain. We can add smart contract logic to do the calculations for you, to do the carbon accounting for you, basically, on the blockchain, so that everything is tracked. It's not manually done. That can be manipulated. And when you do that, now you have a very secure data, and this data can be used to secure your carbon tokens in the future. Now you have data to support these financial assets we call carbon tokens. Consider them as carbon credits, right? So these now can be minted with the big support of the data that we are considered disconnected with IoT devices from the field. So now we have a big picture that can be really, really useful. Application-wise, think about methane emissions we discussed earlier. Think about carbon storage, subsurface storage of carbon. We capture carbon from the atmosphere. We transport it through the pipeline or trucks. We store it underground in a reservoir, and we monitor it for decades to come, right? All this data can be integrated into one system, and it could generate tokens for the projects. So think of it as an extra way of funding these carbon storage projects, right? Other than the 45Q taxes that they are getting, they can provide information to. There would be carbon credits that come out of this project that can now be sold to other companies that are trying to offset their emissions, right? So that would be a big, ambitious plan for where this project is going. All right, so moving on to non-blockchain projects that I thought may be interesting for us to open up at least. One area that we are working on is future-proofing subsurface operation and management, right? Using AI. In this particular area, there are a few technologies that are very key, and we are developing those technologies. One is digital twin for these subsurface assets, right? Whether it is a well you're drilling to get to your asset subsurface, or the subsurface reservoir that you're managing for energy production. These all can be coupled with digital twins, which are basically a digital model of your subsurface asset, but very efficient. Why they're very efficient? We can do traditional modeling, which includes a large group of experts, of 10 plus experts sitting together, trying to map this subsurface asset and then use a numerical simulator to run different scenarios. Each one of them takes a few days to complete and then come up with a picture of what happens subsurface. But what digital twins can do, they can do all of this in a matter of minutes. So a decision maker can make a decision by putting several solutions out there, test them against the digital twins, and then make a decision immediately. So to me, these are more of a decision-making tools rather than engineering tools. Use of graph neural networks for optimizing production from multiple wells in the same field. They're all connected. The question is that how can we optimize this production to get the most value out of this reservoir, right? If you do too much drawdown from one oil and gas well, you're impacting negatively the other wells, and we need to be able to balance those. It is a very hard thing to do. It comes with a lot of field expertise, but maybe graph neural networks can help us doing that. Using AI and ML for predictive modeling is a common thing that a lot of people are using. Using virtual and augmented reality, you see some of the pictures from our really advanced drilling simulation lab. That's models. That's a drilling ship you see at there, and some cyber chairs. That we are using them for training new recruits for oil and gas companies, and other AI tools that we have that we are expanding on. Hopefully, we can use that for both better understanding, better decision making, and training of the different recruits for different companies. One specific case study to show how AI can be used is a case in Wyoming. We have a reservoir called Marilyn Formation in Wyoming. Now, this is the unconventional reservoir. Now, what is the unconventional reservoir? So, we used to have conventional reservoirs that we are developing. These are the reservoirs. I'm talking about subsurface oil and gas reservoirs. Now, you drill a well, the pressure from the subsurface is going to support the production of oil. It's going to push the oil out, right? So those are conventionals. Now, we are basically exhausted those resources so far. Now we are getting into unconventional resources. These are very tight formations. The pressure alone is not enough to release the oil and gas. So what do? We do horizontal drilling, which is a drill like that, and then drill horizontally, and fracking. So you have heard of fracking. These are the technology that allow us to develop these other type of reservoirs that were not accessible, right? These are called unconventional reservoirs. Now, one of the big questions in this reservoir is that where do we frack? This is a massive reservoir, several miles, several feet thickness. What is the right place to frack? We call them sweet spots. Those are the sweet spots that we are trying to find. Finding them is not very easy, especially for some reservoirs like a Marilyn reservoir in Wyoming. It has proven to be very difficult to pinpoint them. And that's where we are using AI to develop these workflows to find these sweet spots for the help of companies. You see a workflow map here, start from data integration, workflow for AI workflow and all the characterization, prediction. And also the most important part is what happens when new data become available, right? These models need to be able to retrain themselves so that they can, as soon as new data become available, they update their predictions. You see one of our preliminary results for the Marilyn Shale sweet spots. You see the red area there on the left side. These are the sweet spots we are identifying using the data available. And you can see most of the wells operations are focused on that area. So that proves that this is probably the sweet spots. However, we have a pretty large uncertainty map, as you can see, and we're hoping that by adding more data, the uncertainty would be reduced. Therefore, more chances for oil and gas companies to target the right place. To give you just a quick example of what can happen there. Other interesting area that we're working on is digital rock physics. So the idea behind digital rock physics is that we are dealing with rock subsurface, right? These are the reservoirs, porous rock that hold our oil and gas. You want to be able to digitize them so that we can understand them better. Specifically, we are looking at automating mineral mapping using different algorithms. Specifically, UNets seem to be working really well for us. And the idea there is I want to get an image, microscope image of a rock, and I want to figure out what is the mineralogy of the rock. This is not possible. You typically need an expert to sit down with a microscope, use a polarized light, use different tools like we can see here at the right of the image. These are micro XRF images. These are images obtained by $500,000 equipment that have the resolution of 10 microns. So I can do a 10 micron pixel characterization of the minerals precise. You see the little rock piece there? This is the Maori shale. It's about maybe half an inch or 1 inch. For me to get those mineral maps that you see on the right, it takes 7 days, right? So very inefficient. It's very precise, but very inefficient. What we are doing, we are trying to, now we develop a lot of data. We are training our unit models to bypass this process to go from the microscope imagery takes maybe an hour directly to mineral mapping. That saves a lot of time for operators. Why? Consider that the reservoir thickness is about 100 foot. They get a 100-foot rock sample. For each of the 1-inch pieces of rock sample, if it takes 7 days for us to characterize, it's just unbelievably slow process. But we want to be able to give them some information so they can use it in the next drilling, which is scheduled 30 days from now. And that's where the efficiency comes from, right? And that's where the AI can be used. The other example at the bottom shows a reactive transport model, which we are using traditional computational fluid dynamic modeling. At the bottom, you see a little bit of a corner of that grain. So that's the center is the grain of rock. And then the white stuff that are hatching from it are the depositions that's happening throughout the process. For us to solve that problem, you can see the zoom in grid that we develop, and we need to solve equations every single grid. This is traditional computational fluid dynamics for 1 grain of rock. And that takes typically using a supercomputer we have both NCAR access to Wyoming NCAR, and also we have a supercomputer here. That would be at least half a day worth of simulation for 1 grain of rock. Now, go from 1 grain of rock to a piece of rock a few inches, go to a reservoir of a few miles. It's very, very inefficient, right? We can't really do it. And we're hoping that AI and machine learning can help us to accelerate the process. Not add a new physics to it, but help us to accelerate the process. And that's where the combination comes from. All right, so a few examples for that. Now, looking towards the future, where can we go? I think I'm personally interested about cross-cutting digital technologies. I think these all can feed into each other. We have blockchain, which provides trust and transparency, ensures data integrity, provide real-time accountability, enables decentralization. And we have AI that is really good for prediction optimization, right? The projects you see. Combination of these can help us develop these trusted intelligent energy systems. That would be, to me, the future of our industry is probably there, right? We are hoping that by first making all these projects at these different levels and then bringing them together, hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, we hope we can develop this kind of projects for the big field that we can now work with oil and gas companies to optimize their operations. All right. I have a few minutes left. So we are a research center. So of course, our first mandate is research, but I also want to, it didn't download the entire thing. I think. I also want to talk about education. I'm a professor, so one of my other mandates is educating students and developing workforce. I have developed a course called Blockchain Energy. It's a very unique course. No other universities in the US have any courses like this. Typically, blockchain is our thoughts in a computer science departments, right? But this is an introductory course, no prerequisites required, open to all engineering students. And the idea is to bring them in and get them exposed to blockchain, specifically from the energy application perspective, right? I used to teach this course in person for about 2 years and 3 years, I think. And this year, for the first time, we launched fully online version of the course. I'm hoping that university would target outside experts for this type of course, because now it is fully online and somebody from oil and gas can come and take this course to understand what is blockchain and how does it work. The course specifically works on foundations first. We try to teach them what was the history of blockchain. How does blockchain work even, right? What are tokens? What is blockchain? What is decentralization? And then after that, you use Bitcoin and Ethereum to establish the difference between two different networks, right? Bitcoin, very cryptocurrency centered, Ethereum, very application centered, and they would do that comparison. And after that, we dive into coding. So they would do some smart contract coding. They develop their own tokens, which is typically the exciting part of the class. They develop the tokens with their own name, which is, I think they like it a lot. And playing around with some applications. And eventually they submit a project at the end of the term. Is either an idea and support and providing an argument for what this idea is a good idea, or it could be a project that they work on. All right. So my slides are kind of half. I have to stop here. I got a couple of slides after this, but I just talk about them. And I guess what is left to discuss is that we wanted the center to be very applied. We want that everything we work on has an idea or a problem, and we are trying to find a solution for it. So it cannot be done by one person or one faculty. It's more of a collaborative thing. So what I'm going to call for is we want the industry to collaborate with us. We want us to learn about ideas or about problems that the different industry from blockchain side to energy side have to deal with. And maybe we can come up with some ideas and we can develop that together. Co-developing ideas, what industry can do, help students, internship, fellowship for the students to study these kind of topics at the university, and helping them to go to conferences and all of that, and also working with us on certain projects. We are looking into federal funding for a lot of projects that requires industry engagement. That would be an area. Or if the industry wants to have a private project that is kind of wrapped on and the information doesn't get out because they are trying to develop some advantage over the competition, that's also a possibility that we can do in the center. And yes, with that, I would like to thank Matthew and others for inviting me for this. I would like to get connected to you, hear about your ideas, and figure out where we go from here. Thank you. Question? Yes.
Investment here. If you any data that show that would has to that.
Great question. Great question. So the question is basically AI is expensive, right? Running an AI is very energy intensive. The question is, are you getting a value out of it, right? So I have to say, I'm a researcher, so I don't necessarily, this is not the top concern that I have because I get free compute from Cheyenne and Gar because I'm a researcher working on it, right? So that being said, these models are not models that we necessarily want to train day in and day out. These are the models we train once, and then we hook it up to our decision-making algorithms to use the information and make a decision. So training is the hard part. Running the models typically are lightweight to give different answers, right? So training piece is going to be heavy. It's going to be energy intensive, and it takes a lot of time. But when you came up with your, let's say, sweet spot map, that's a good example. I came up with a sweet spot map, right? This is the map. Now I get a new layer drilled and a new information coming available. I don't have to retrain the entire thing. It's a transfer learning, right? I can just train on the new data only. So that's a fractional improvement. The original amount of energy that I spend on developing my first model is going to feed in perpetuity for the entire project for many years to come. Right? Yes, exactly. So I'm not too worried about that because drilling an oil well, I don't know how much you're familiar with, but drilling an oil well will cost you from $1 to $10 million. And if you get the wrong place, $10 million gone. How much we're going to spend money to train a model? Maybe a fraction of $1 million to train a model like that, right? Right. That's correct. Yes. To the postmortem. I agree. Yeah. Right. Right. So the truth is that we haven't done cost analysis yet because we don't even have the models, right? Not yet. So we are just developing the models. After we develop the model, then we have an industry partner that wants to test it, then that's a good question. Are we providing enough benefit to the company that makes sense for them to invest, or we are overdoing it? I'm not too concerned because the technology in terms of the training and the power requirement or the cost per compute is reducing dramatically, right? Even if it's not cost effective today, a year from now, 2 years from now, that's a different story. Yeah. Right. Right. So I told you initially that this is not a top priority that I have right now. The question I'm asking as a researcher, is it possible? Like after it is possible, then the next step is absolutely is it cost effective? Right. And that's a question I don't have an answer. Yeah. Okay, so I typically allow students outside the engineering discipline to participate, but because we are doing some coding and we are doing a little bit of technical analysis of things, it's better suited for engineering students. However, I had students that I give permission to as long as they have some familiarity. Like I had students from law school attending, I have a student from business school attending, and they were very successful too. So yeah, it is open. I just want to make sure that, I'm engineering faculty, so I make sure that the class is, so if the class gets full, we want to make sure the engineering students get the first benefit. But if the class is open and more students come in, yeah, why not? Absolutely. You're welcome. Yes.
Each carbon that is should be a cryptocurrency and a beautiful for them.
Interesting concept. So the way I'm looking at it is if I can store 1 ton of CO2 underground successfully, I can prove it and can provide decades of data afterwards that I have done it. That is, to me, is a carbon token, right? Right. So you can think of it as a proof of work, or you can think of it as a token that has a backed data, a physical token that has a physical real system that is backing it up. And that is valuable. I don't know how much you know about the carbon credit markets, but it is actually taking off, kind of. It has ups and downs. Different administration might change it a little bit, but right now you can buy a ton of carbon credits from, depending on that's interesting part. It's not fixed. A ton of carbon price for a ton of carbon credit is not fixed. It depends on what project and how reliable is the data of that. You can get anywhere from, I think, $80, $90 at some point to $200 is the range, right? And I think if we want to do a really good job, first of all, I think carbon storage subsurface is the most controllable carbon removal technology that's permanent, right? And economic. We understand it very well. So we have started working on it many decades ago, and we understand it really well. You have a little bit of a risk of leakage, that's given, right? But others, like using trees for carbon credits, their variability, right? Seasonal temperature going to play a role. Season's going to play a role. So it's a lot of uncertainty there. Versus in a subsurface, you measure that ton of CO2 precise that you're putting. So I think it's a little bit of a better way of doing it. And I do think if we implement these ideas, these kind of carbon credits would be the up premium carbon.
Obtain energy voices.
Great point. Yes, ownership is a big part. Like, let's consider, in the US, we have a private, you can get a mineral, basically leasing, right? And having the leasing done on a blockchain is a great, example. The issue there is that it is a governmental control, right? So the government needs to buy into this first. And if they do, then yeah, of course we can do that. And I do believe there are projects, or at least I heard some interest in that area, right? Yeah, absolutely as interesting area. I had a couple of students in the past few years to pick that as a topic of their project during the semester too. I think that's definitely a good match. One thing though that we need to also think about is that what is blockchain good for? What is blockchain not good for? If we have an authority that is giving these leases and controlling these leases, having blockchain might not have a lot of value because there is a centralized authority anyways, right? Versus in an area that there is a collaboration between multiple entities that are not necessarily trusting each other, that's the best use case of blockchain. And that's what I think carbon management might be it, because consider you have the carbon, whoever captures the carbon is one entity, whoever transports the carbon is another entity, and who's storing the carbon is another entity, and there might be the fourth entity who is monitoring the post leakage of the carbon, and then there's the federal government, and they all have different incentives, right? Probably conflicting incentives too. That's what blockchain can do really well, because now everybody on the same ground floor, and we all agree that these are the rules of the game, and this is the data. So it's very easy to manage it that way. So that's the way I think as what application would be better.